Imagine this. It's October 24th, 2025, a date that will echo through the annals of cosmic history like a whisper from the void. For the very first time, the International Asteroid Warning Network, IAWN, the UN-backed fortress of planetary defense forged in the fires of potential apocalypse to shield Earth from rogue rocks and doomsday comets, flips the switch on an unprecedented observation campaign. But here's the gut punch. The target isn't some Earth-kissing asteroid on a collision course, nor a fiery comet barreling toward our blue marble. No, it's 3I Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar wanderer to grace our solar system. A ghostly voyager from the abyss of another star system. Officials swear on every telescope in existence that it poses zero threat, never dipping closer than 270 million kilometers, already slingshotting away from us like a reluctant farewell. So why, in the name of every star in the sky, are astronomers from Tokyo to Tucson mobilizing as if the veil of reality is about to tear? Hit like and subscribe to find out right now. IAEON isn't some casual stargazing club. It's the global nerve center for extinction-level threats, the same network that drills for impacts that could erase cities, continents, civilizations. In its 11-year history, it never once bent its ironclad mandate for visitors like Oumuamua in 2017, the enigmatic cigar that sparked fever dreams of alien probes, or Borisov in 2019, the rogue comet that fizzled out under scrutiny without a single alarm bell. But through Atlas, suddenly the floodgates open, protocols shatter, resources pour in like a tidal wave. This isn't evolution, it's revolution. And the timing, it's surgical, almost scripted. Picture the drama. For weeks through 5. Atlas lurks in solar conjunction, a celestial game of hide and seek behind our own sun's blinding glare, invisible to Earth's prying eyes. Then bam! October 24th dawns, the alignment cracks, and the first unobscured glimpses pierce the darkness. That same day, IAWN's announcement drops like a meteorite campaign activated. Telescopes worldwide swivel into position, data streams ignite, and the world of science hums with urgency. Just 8 days later, on October 29th, the object hits perihelion, its flirtatious closest dance with the sun a mere 203 million kilometers out, where the heat could bake secrets from its icy hide. Coincidence or choreography, whatever anomaly flickered in those initial post-conjunction frames, it demanded eyes on target right then, right there, at the trajectory's fever pitch. Now let's dissect the official line, because it gleams on the surface like polished obsidian smooth. But crack it open and shadows dance. IAWN calls this a comet astrometry campaign. A 2-month rehearsal from November 27th, 2025 to January 27th, 2026. Fine-tuning how we track fuzzy comets with tails that blur orbits like watercolor in rain. Smart right, planetary defense thrives on practice. Better to stumble in a drill than during Armageddon. NASA's own orbital wizardry confirms 3I Atlas is outbound, a hyperbolic bullet piercing our system at escape velocity, bound for the interstellar black. No impact risk. No deflection needed. So why the full court press? Why mandatory workshops with velvet rope access, registration deadlines that scream priority, and a global call to arms for observatories from the ESA to Japan's Subaru, all laser-focused on this fleeting ghost, thanks to a random cosmic coincidence and orbital mechanics setup that feels almost orchestrated. This interstellar object hits its closest point to our star, while sitting directly behind the sun from Earth's perspective. The phenomenon is known in astronomy by the cold term solar conjunction. And for 8 long days from October 21st until today, October 29th, 3 Atlas has been nearly invisible to us. Harvard's own Dr. Avi Loeb, yes, the same trailblazer who chased Oumuamua's shadows, flags it loud. These signatures mirror industrial forges on Earth, nickel tetracarbonyl vapors that bind metals in factories not forged in the crucibles of nascent stars. Keck 2's August spectra caught plumes pumping 4 grams of pure nickel per second. No iron chaperone in sight. A duo that's cosmic gospel for every meteorite we've cracked open. VLT in Chile echoes the anomaly, glowing vapors at distances too chill for natural melt, hinting at volatile bonds that whisper of refinement, processes not random stellar alchemy. Hold up before your inner skeptic rolls eyes at ancient aliens reruns, ground this in granite. These aren't tinfoil hat fever dreams. This is raw data from the world's sharpest scopes funneled through peer-reviewed preprints and Loeb's Galileo project, which hunts techno-signatures with the rigor of a detective chasing ghosts in the machine. Nickel carbonyls. They thrive in CO-rich voids around Yongsan Shore, but the ratios here defy the databases. No natural comet we've cataloged spits this cocktail, and Loeb's Loeb scale. He pegs 3I Atlas at a tantalizing 3 by 4 out of 10, not screaming mothership, but enough weirdness to warrant the watch. What if this isn't debris from a shattered world but a relic of something deliberate? A probe, a fragment of forgotten tech slingshotting through our neighborhood on a billion-year joyride. Or darker, a Trojan horse seeding the dark with mini-drones at perihelion Oberth maneuvers, flipping gravity's script toward unsuspecting worlds like ours. This is the contradiction that keeps me up at night staring at star charts like a map to buried treasure. ION's mandate is impact defense, not interstellar archaeology. Yet here we are, deploying it for a flyby that's already history. A visitor that'll fade into the cosmic tide by early 2026, our sole window slamming shut forever. Leaked footage from Japanese scopes, grainy clips of elongated shadows that some swear outline a vessel, fuels the fire even as debunkers cry hoax. So we're not talking about an object that will instantly melt or shatter from proximity. Instead, we're talking about an environment intense enough, a radiation furnace strong enough to dramatically accelerate any processes already brewing inside it. Processes that began as 3A Atlas fell deeper into the sun's gravity well over the past year. Processes that made scientists frown and question. If your pulse quickens at this, if the official training exercise narrative feels like a half-told tale glossing over the grit, then welcome to the vanguard. You're not alone. From Reddit riffs to X threads ablaze, a digital diaspora of skywatchers pours over every pixel, every preprint demanding the full spectrum. Smash that like button and let this ripple to the edges of the earth, because between now and January's curtain call, revelations could cascade like a meteor shower. Drop your spot in the comments. Tokyo's neon haze, Arizona's desert scopes, Cape Town's southern skies. This isn't a US yarn or a Euro echo. It's a planetary pulse threading through every longitude, every latitude. Subscribe, because I'm locked in dissecting the November workshops, those invite-only enigmas, unspooling December's data deluge, and decoding January's verdict. This unfolds in real-time, raw, and relentless, no rearview mirrors. We're not historians, we're witnesses. By probing the why behind a harmless comet commandeering our defense grid, by rejecting pat answers for the poetry of possibility, we claw back the narrative from the headlines that skim and vanish. October 21st wasn't just a dawn, it was a door cracking open to the what-ifs that redefine us. Step through. The stars are waiting, and they might just be watching back. October 23rd, 2025, the Minor Planet Center. Harvard's iron vault. For every speck of rock and ice humanity has ever clocked drops a bulletin that lands like a detonation in a library. Subject line: IAWN campaign. 3I Atlas. Dates: November 27, 2025. January 27, 2026. 2 months razor cut. Objective exercise. The capability of the observing community to extract accurate astrometry from a distant interstellar comet. Read that last phrase again. Not study, not characterize. Exercise. The word is clipped martial, the kind of verb you stamp on a war game order. Context is a guillotine. IAWN has stood sentinel since 2014, a UN-blessed Praetorian Guard against extinction rocks. 11 years of near-Earth asteroids skimming the moon's doorstep, comets threading the inner system like needles through silk. Hundreds of coordinated tracks. 0 formal campaigns for anything born beyond the sun's dominion. Oumuamua got fevered glances from lone scopes. Borisov drew crowds of professional eyes. Neither triggered a single registration form, a single mandatory briefing, a single dollar of telescope time booked under CHWN's banner. 3I Atlas breaks the streak like bone through skin. Rewind to the blackout. For weeks, the object ghosted behind the sun in perfect solar conjunction and optical eclipse. Earth's telescope stared into a white furnace and saw nothing. Calculations whispered where it should be, but no photons, no spectra, no heartbeat. Blind flight. Then the instant the alignment cracked. October 21st. Zawo, UTC, the bulletin fired. No lag, no committee dust. The decision was preloaded, cocked, waiting for the curtain to rise. Timeline compresses to a heartbeat. Registration closes November 7th. 17 days. Professional observatory schedule mirrored time 6 months out. Grants breathe on quarterly cycles. Trans-Pacific logistics crawl. 17 days is a middle finger to inertia. The subtext is brutal, abandon your queue. This eats the calendar. Entry is gated, November 10th. A workshop attendance non-negotiable. Miss it, you're locked out. Astronomy is historically porous. Data pours into open archives the moment shutters close. Hair clearance is a velvet choke chain. You register, you attend, you are briefed then, and only then do you touch the eyepiece. What technique is so sensitive it demands a closed room? What astrometry tweak justifies a velvet rope? The stated rationale is tidy comets are bastards to pin down. Gas shrouds, bloom centers drift 1/10 of an arc-second error balloons into orbital chaos across decades. Planetary defense lives or dies on that margin. 3I Atlas is a comet. It's distant, it's harmless, ideal stress test. Except the inner solar system is lousy with comets. Dozens glow, in any given season, pedigreed, predictable, chemically mapped down to the isotope. Yet IAWN picks the outlier screaming 210,000 km/h on a one-way hyperbolic ticket. The one bleeding aerospace-grade nickel carbonyls no natural ice ball has ever exhaled, the one sprouting an anti-tail. A backward spike of dust defying every textbook vector. That is the sparring partner they chose. Cost is the silent scream. JWST time is auctioned in $40,000 hourly lots. Hubble still commands 5 figures. VLT Keck Subaru Mars. Express every flagship has carved out reserved blocks, not scraps between fillers. Millions in hardware salaries, fuel for generators perched on volcanic peaks. For practice, the bulletin's verb is surgical exercise capability. Not invent, not refine, test what already exists under live fire. The network is confirming the rifle still shoots straight. The question is why they needed a bullet from another galaxy to pull the trigger. They're not handing out new playbooks. They're running the old one through live ammunition. The goal is cold confirmation. Every scope, every algorithm, every human eye in the chain still hits the bull's eye when the target is ugly, fast, and wrong. That's pre-op validation, not classroom theory. You don't stress test a seatbelt on a go-kart. You slam it into a brick wall at highway speed. Yet here we are watching the world's premier defense network strap in for a ride that no earthly vehicle has ever taken. Urgency is the first fracture. If this is rehearsal, why the sprint 17 days to commit is a starting pistol, not an invitation. Telescopes don't pivot on dimes. They orbit on calendars measured in fiscal years. The November 7th guillotine slices through that inertia like it was tissue. And the Velvet Gate mandatory November 10th briefing clearance required turns open science into a speakeasy. What astrometric tweak is so radioactive it needs a password? Then the guest list. IOTWN didn't just ring the pros. It opened the door to backyard warriors with 8-inch Dobbs and Raspberry Pi rigs. Citizen call-ups are not in the charter. Professional redundancy is muscle memory. Amateur saturation is a dragnet. They want every longitude, every weather window, every shaky tripod, feeding the same data pipe. That's either obsessive validation or a quorum so thick no single outlier can be shouted down. The window itself is a countdown carved in ice. Post-perihelion. October 29th, 3I Atlas arcs outward, brightness bleeding with every million kilometers. November 27th, still juicy coma glowing like a neon bruise. January 27th, a ghost on the edge of grasp, slipping below the horizon of even the Titan scopes. After that eternal dark. One shot, no sequel, no second season. They built a global machine to drink this moment dry, and labeled the cup practice. Both stories can coexist: training and something louder until you zoom on the target. 3i Atlas is not a standard sedan. It's a vehicle from another dimension shedding nickel vapors no solar system forge ever minted, sprouting an anti-tail that points the wrong way like a middle finger to physics. If the exercise is to prove the ruler still measures straight, why hand it a funhouse mirror? Astrometry is the spine of the argument, so let's strip it naked. It's nothing more than pinning a moving dot against a starfield frame after frame, until the dots past, present, and future collapse into a single clean line. Miss by an eyelash at 200 million kilometers, and your prediction is off by a continent a decade out. Comets lie, their gas halos swell, and shift centers wander like drunks. The art is finding the drunk's true heart inside the haze. Inner system comets are drunkards we've watched stumble home for centuries, catalog predictable, chemically mundane. 3i Atlas is a stranger screaming through the bar at 58 exhaling metallurgy instead of water, trailing a dust spike backward like a comet wearing its tail as a cape. It is the hardest dot humanity has ever been asked to pin. If the network wanted routine, the sky's full of easier drunks. They pick the one that rewrites the sobriety test. So the gaps yawn open: precedent, shattered timeline, compressed access, gated talent pool. Exploded budget, detonated target, weaponized with anomalies no textbook predicted. The official line patches most holes with training, but the patches are thin, and the wind is rising. What remains is the space between stated intent and observed frenzy, the vacuum where real questions breathe. Get it wrong, and the deflection fleet launches at a ghost. Get it right, and we nudge the bullet aside with years to spare. Astrometry is the difference between salvation and a silent sky. The method is older than empires. Sailors once sextanted stars to cross oceans. Now CCDs freeze photons and algorithms stitch motion from stillness. Asteroids oblige crisp, hard-edged, obedient to gravity's ledger. Comets laugh. They arrive cloaked in comb 100,000-kilometer shrouds of vapor and dust that swallow the nucleus like fog around a lantern. Telescopes drink the glow, not the lantern. Measure the haze and you measure a lie. Picture the streetlight and mist. The bulb is a pebble. The halo is a stadium. Mark the halo's heart tonight, and the fog drifts by dawn. Tomorrow's mark drifts with it. Chain those drifting hearts across weeks, and your predicted path balloons into a ribbon wide enough to swallow continents. 3i Atlas hides a nucleus maybe half a kilometer across inside a coma the size of Jupiter's orbit. 1 kilometer of centroid error today is 10,000 tomorrow, a million the day after. Planetary defense dies in that margin. The IAAWN bulletin spells it cold. Cometary bodies are extended lumpy jet spewing. Brightness peaks lie. Centroids slide. Errors are not noise. They are bias, systematic, repeatable, lethal if misread. A deflection mission aimed at the glow hits vacuum. A threat dismissed as off-target punches atmosphere while we applaud our precision. Proof of Mastery 2008. TC3. Spotted 19 hours out tracked to a Sudanese sandbox, fragments bagged before sunrise. Asteroid. Clean. Asteroids forgive. Comets do not. Their gas jets fire like afterburners, non-gravitational kicks that rewrite orbits nightly. Their comas billow under solar wind sails without a captain. Track the glow, and the nucleus drifts. Track the nucleus, and the glow drifts. The math unravels. Inner system comets are drunk cousins we've watched stumble home for generations. We know their blood alcohol curves, their stagger patterns, their family trees. The dozens lurch past every year, anyone a perfect sparring partner. Yet IAWN crowns 3i Atlas. Why? Velocity is a tyrant. 210,000 km/h, twice Earth's orbital clip. Observation windows collapse from years to weeks. Measure, remeasure, or lose the trail. Hyperbolic arc, one pass, no encore. Miss the window, and the data dies with the light. Composition is alien. Forged in another star's crucible, it exhales chemistry our models never tasted. Every assumption is a coin toss. This is not practice. This is crucible. The network chose the hardest target in the sky to prove the net still holds when the sky itself is the lie. Our models might crumble like ancient ice under the sun's glare. That's the raw edge of discovery stripping away the safety net of assumptions, forcing astronomers to chase truth through a fog of unknowns, calibrating every pixel against baselines that shift like sand. Techniques forged in this fire don't lean on yesterday's comets. They stand alone, razor sharp for the black swans that rewrite the rules. And 3i Atlas. It's no gentle primer. This beast barrels in at 58 Cleotilix as a hyperbolic ghost unbound by our sun's pull, exhaling a chemistry born in some alien forge billions of years distant. The pressure cooker of its arc velocity that devours observation windows a one-way ticket out of the system. Volatiles that defy our spectral libraries mirrors the nightmare scenario, a real threat materializing from the void demanding split-second precision without a rehearsal. No danger here, sure, but the simulation bites just as deep, honing the network's edge for the day when harmless turns to incoming. Yet here's the fracture line: does that razor-wire realism alone warrant the fortress they're building? The iron-fisted workshops, the velvet-roped access, the commandeering of crown jewel scopes from Mauna Kea's volcanic heights to Atacama's bone-dry vaults. Or is 3i Atlas merely the alibi, a convenient veil over data that whispers louder than orbital math ever could? Spectrographs don't lie. They scream, and what they're capturing isn't just a tough nut to crack. It's a composition that mocks every comet in our Rolodex signatures, so alien some whisper impossible under their breath, as if natural laws took a coffee break. These weren't afterthoughts snapped post-announcement to justify the frenzy. No, the first glints of this weirdness flickered weeks before October 21st in the pre-conjunction haze, enough to greenlight the mobilization before the curtain even rose. They saw something, in the grainy prelude frames and the infrared ghosts, something that turned a training drill into a global dragnet. To pierce the veil, we don't chase the ghost path, we dissect the ghost itself. Size, speed, spectrum. The flesh and bone anomalies that flip the script from why train on this to what the hell is this? Scale sets the stage and 3i Atlas plays it grand. Hubble's July stare pinned the nucleus between 440 meters, a jagged spike the height of Manhattan's Chrysler Building, thrusting skyward like a defiant monolith, and 5.6 kilometers swallowing the island's length from Battery Park's bustle to Harlem's shadowed bends. That's not pebble territory. It's a behemoth massing billions of tons even at the low end, geologically scarred from eons of cosmic drift. No planet killer, thank the stars. NASA's orbital autopsy swears it off closest flirtation, a chilly 1.8 AU 270 million kilometers out farther than Mars at opposition by a factor of 5. Swing through perihelion on October 29th at 1.4 AU, just inside the red planet's loop. Then slingshot outbound on that unbound arc, vanishing into the galactic dark by early 26. Safe physically, yes. But crater this colossus into a continent hypothetically in some parallel dread, and you'd etch scars. Megacities vaporized in fireballs. Skies choked with ejecta regional winters, starving millions, ecosystems unraveling like frayed thread. Civilization altering, not ending. A reminder that even ghosts carry weight. Velocity is the whip cracking behind it all, a relentless lash that turns every tick of the clock into a sprint. 210. 1,000 kilometers h, 58 kilometers every second, 3,500 kilometers a minute dwarfs Earth's sedate 30 kilometers orbital waltz. Interstellar pedigree demands it unbound. It hurtles from Sagittarius's dusty arms tilted high in the galactic disk likely forged 7 to 14 billion years ago. Around some heavy element poor, thick disk star adrift through a graveyard of gravitational tugs. For observers, it's a tyrant's bargain. Snap a frame at 3 AU out, crunch the pixels, and by your next exposure it's bolted 10,000 kilometers downrange. Astrometry becomes a high-wire act. Subarc second locks, femtosecond timestamps, pipelines, churning data like a fusion reactor. Delay is death. The window slams shut faster than a black hole's event horizon. But chemistry, that's the abyss staring back the cocktail that turns challenging into what fresh cosmic heresy is. This LH JWST's infrared gaze in September, peering through the veil at 3.3 AU, unveiled a coma bloated with carbon dioxide and 8:1 CO2 to H2O ratio. the highest feast of dry ice ever spied in a comet's shroud. Solar system snowballs are wet affairs. Dirty ices sublimating H2O into tails that fan like breath on glass. Here, a parched exhaling CO2 dominant laced with CO carbonyl sulfide and scant water vapor, or OH radicals glimpsed by Swift's UVOT in July-August, forged in the outer chill of its birth system perhaps where CO2 froze solid while water boiled off into the stellar wind, plausible a tweak on known physics echoing Borisov's own CO spike but amplified to 11. The coma reddens with tholin dust evolving from July's pale haze to a rusty veil by August jets, firing like afterburners even at frigid removes. Active undeniably, Hubble's teardrop dust cocoon on July 21st, streaked stars trailing its hyperbolic blur, confirms the icy heart-pumping gas and grit. Then the gut-punch nickel, not embedded ore but vapor-neutral Ni atoms glowing at 341 nanometers and 352 nanometers fingerprints etched in the coma's spectrum. VLT's X-shooter and UVES caught it first on July 20th at 3.88 AU nearly 4 times. Earth's solar leash pumping 4.6 grams per second scaling to a power law frenzy as it closed in QNI RMOH 6.4, a torrent defying the chill. Keck 2 echoed the call in August KCWI frames, unveiling plumes laced with CN cyanide at 360 nanometer alongside the night blaze. But zero iron, no fee. Eyeline's the cosmic sidekick that's gospel in every meteorite we've cracked. Nickel demands Inferno 1000 Atlas degree ID+. To volatilize, yet here it goes out at 200 degree size. Black body temps untethered from its iron twin. Theories scramble like shadows at dawn. Nickel tetracarbonyl, NiCO4, an industrial specter from earthly refineries binding metal in volatile cages that photodissociate under UV-spitting pure Ni without the Fe baggage, or organic scaffolds carbon monoxide soups from the CO2 deluge cracking low temp to free the ghost metal exotic but natural a cooked shell from cosmic ray baking over billions of years. Concentrations mirror solar system comets at heliocentric piers. Yet the absence, the purity, the early onset, unprecedented. Black Swan. Loeb calls it pegging a 3-4 on his techno-signature scale, not screaming mothership, but enough to twitch the needle toward engineered relic, a fragment from some long-dead forge, where nickel was refined for hulls not haphazardly fused, and that's before the tail twists the knife. Hubble and Keck frames reveal an anti-tail, not the standard solar wind lash away, but a sunward spike dust or gas, defying radiation pressure stretching like an accusatory finger toward Sol. Gravitational may be large grains in bound orbits or jets carving backward, but it's a middle finger to convention ignored by some as familiar comet noise, while others like Loeb hammer the anomaly. Why no fanfare for the freak? Add the ecliptic skim, the pulse whispers at 1420. Megahertz's some claim unverified static or SETI fever dream the sheer kinetic fury. 33 billion tons at 58 kilometers packing Hiroshima's yield times. 667 million, and the puzzle metastasizes. Training perhaps, but these scars run deeper than drills. Mars, flyby, on October 3rd. 30 million kilometer skim, high-rise, snaps from orbiters like Perseverance and Curiosity. ESA's TGO twisting mid-mission for a blurry dot in the Martian sky. Yielded cometary haze, but whispers of withheld frames fuel the fire. JUICE eyes it from Jupiter's fringe in November. SOHO peaks post-perihelion. Yet the scale millions in scope time global quorum of pros and porch astronomers screams investigation a velvet-gloved autopsy on the living. If it's a comet, it's the Rosetta Stone to alien chemistry's thick disk fossils from a galaxy's dawn. If more ADOR cracked to the engineered unknown probes or relics scouting the dark. The IAWN machine grinds on from November's gated briefings to January's fade-out, but the gaps pulse with possibility. We're not just measuring a dot, we're weighing the void's secrets, and it might just tip the scales. Perihelion on October 29th was still a frigid 200 degrees Celsius at the surface, a temperature that should have locked every atom of nickel in crystalline silence, yet the coma exhaled it at 4 to 6 grams per second. a steady metallic sigh that drifted through the vacuum like smoke from a forge that had no business existing. Solar radiation at 1.4 AU is a weak campfire in a blizzard. It scorches the sunward crust, yes, but the interior remains a tomb of ancient ice, and pure nickel demands a sustained inferno above 1,000 degrees Celsius to vaporize in the quantities observed. Something is either concentrating heat far beyond what physics allows in a natural body, or the nickel is not metal at all, but a ghost bound in a chemical cage released by a Kino comet in our catalog carries. The spectroscopic fingerprints 341 and 352 nms glowed with the clarity of neon signs confirmed independently by Keck 2 and the Very Large Telescope, and the absence of iron was the silence that screamed louder than any emission line. Nickel and iron are cosmic twins forged in the same stellar crucibles ejected together in supernova shock waves, locked arm in arm in every meteorite humanity has ever cradled. The Ni-Fe ratio is a universal fingerprint etched into the bones of the solar system, yet 3I Atlas bled nickel alone iron. AWOL, not a trace, not a whisper, a spectral void that violated every expectation with surgical precision. Dr. Avi Loeb, chair of Harvard's astronomy department and the sharpest blade in the interstellar hunt, pinned the anomaly to the wall the moment the data crossed his desk. No known natural comet does this. Not one. His cursor hovered over nickel tetracarbonyl NiCO4, an industrial phantom stable at 100 degrees Celsius, a compound that photodissociates under ultraviolet light to spit pure nickel vapor without the iron chaperone, a molecule brewed in earthly refineries and chemical plants, not in the cold chaos of collapsing nebulae. Loeb did not shout artifact. He whispered a scientist's creed: investigate before you explain away. Because extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence, but so does dismissing data that refuses to fit the mold. Natural counter-theories sprinted in like firefighters to a blaze. A metal-rich nebula, where nickel condensed preferentially a pressure-temperature window that favored one sibling over the other, cosmic rays, stripping iron into oblivion over billions of years. But each hypothesis remained untested, a sketch on a napkin against the hard edges of the spectra, and the uncertainty itself became the object's most compelling feature. Then Hubble turned its unblinking eye and caught the anti-tail, a sunward spike of dust or ice defying radiation pressure like salmon swimming upstream through a solar torrent. September 2025 frame showed it clearly, not a faint artifact, not a processing error, but a forward-directed jet or stream, a middle finger to the unidirectional forces that have shaped every comet tail since the dawn of the solar system. Loeb's team floated an elegant escape hatch optical sleight of hand where large, slow grains lag behind smaller, faster ones, creating a perspective mirage when Earth's line of sight slices the geometry at just the right angle. But no solar system comet had ever handed us the phenomenon in high definition before, no precedent. No analog, just theory, meeting reality for the first time in 3I Atlas's alien silhouette. The explanation fit the math-echoed proposals for similar features in distant cousins. Yet the clarity of the image turned a footnote into a headline. Another unprecedented brick in a wall already groaning under the weight of anomalies. Stack the deck and watch it tower a CO2-dominated coma with an 8:1 ratio over water. Rare, but not impossible in the outer reaches of some distant system. Nickel vapor at cryogenic distances, thermodynamically absurd without a hidden furnace. Zero iron cosmic heresy that severed the universal bond. An anti-tail captured in crisp Hubble glory, the first confirmed case in human history. And beneath it all, an age whispered by trajectory and velocity. 7 to 14 billion years, drifting through the interstellar dark, older than the Earth, older than the sun, forged around a star that may have burned out before our own was born. Its composition shaped by conditions we can only infer from simulations in starlight. Each anomaly alone is a curiosity, a puzzle piece that might slot into some undiscovered corner of natural law. But together they form a constellation. No model has ever mapped a royal flush dealt from a deck no solar system comet has ever touched. The IAAWN campaign begins to look less like rehearsal and more like quarantine, less like a drill and more like a dissection performed behind velvet curtains and mandatory briefings. The November 10th workshop is not a classroom. It is a vault where clearance is granted and silence is implied. The global dragnet professionals and porch astronomers alike, from Mauna Kea's volcanic crowns to Atacama's bone-dry plains, casts a net wide enough to catch every photon, every whisper, every deviation before it escapes into the public ether. Millions in telescope time pipelines humming at fever-pitch, data funneled through channels that bypass open archives. This is not the choreography of practice, but the precision of an autopsy on a living anomaly. They are not training to measure a comet. They are measuring how far the comet breaks the rules, how quietly the rules can be broken, and how long the world can be kept staring at the training wheel's narrative while the real questions pulse in the dark. The 2-month window from November 27th to January 27th is not a rehearsal schedule. It is a countdown to the moment the object fades below the horizon of even the largest scopes, taking its secrets with it into the galactic night, leaving behind only the data we manage to wrest from its passage and the silence we choose to fill with answers or with wonder. We stand at the edge of a chasm carved by time itself, gazing into a relic that predates the sun, a frozen shard from a stellar nursery, long since scattered to the galactic wind, carrying within its icy veins the chemical memory of a cosmos we will never touch. 3i Atlas is not merely large, spanning from the Chrysler Building spire to the full length of Manhattan. It is fast, screaming through the void at 58 kilometers per second, chemically defiant, with a carbon dioxide coma that drowns water in an 8:1 ratio, exhaling nickel vapor where iron should walk beside it, older than Earth, older than Sol, forged 7 to 14 billion years ago, in a thick disk crucible that may have collapsed into a neutron star before our own system even dreamed of ignition. Hubble caught its anti-tail, a sunward spike of dust or ice, defying radiation pressure like a comet wearing its own shadow as a crown. And every anomaly, every spectral ghost, every missing cosmic twin is documented, verified, etched into data streams from Mauna Kea to Atacama, from JWST's golden mirrors to Keck's adaptive eyes. These are not rumors. These are facts, cold and luminous, stacking like obsidian layers until the object ceases to be a comet and becomes a question wearing ice. The International Asteroid Warning Network did not activate for curiosity. It activated because something in those facts crossed a threshold. The official narrative is clean, almost elegant. This is a planetary defense exercise, a live fire drill using the hardest target the sky has ever offered. And it deserves a fair hearing, because dismissing it as theater without testing its weight would be the intellectual equivalent of closing the telescope shutter at dawn. NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office and IAWN were born for one reason: to keep Earth breathing. That mission is no longer theoretical. In September 2022, DART slammed into Dimorphos, a moonlet orbiting the asteroid Didymos, and shaved 4 minutes off its orbital clock with nothing but kinetic fury. We proved deflection works. We proved we can move a rock. But Dimorphos was a known quantity, tracked for years, mapped to the centimeter. Its dance with Didymos choreographed down to the second. DART launched 10 months early, corrected course like a guided missile, struck exactly where the math said it would. A triumph, yes, but a luxury real threats will not grant. Real threats arrive unannounced. They materialize in a telescope's field of view, with days or weeks of warning, not years. They demand detection, astrometry orbit, refinement, threat assessment, and deflection planning under a ticking clock that does not pause for committee meetings. Every step hinges on position, where the object is now, where it will be tomorrow, where it must be nudged to miss us by a hair. A single arcsecond of error at discovery becomes a continent-sized miss weeks later. Asteroids are honest. They obey gravity and nothing else. Comets lie. They outgas. They sprout jets that act like afterburners, pushing the nucleus off the predicted path in ways no equation can forecast until the gas ignites. Non-gravitational acceleration turns orbital mechanics into guesswork. You cannot hit what you cannot predict. You cannot deflect what you cannot track. Enter 3i Atlas. It is everything a real threat could be, and nothing it needs to be. It is fast twice Earth's orbital speed, compressing observation windows into heartbeats. It is hyperbolic, one pass, no return, no second chance to correct a mistake. It is chemically alien, its outgassing defying every model built on solar system snowballs. It is active at distances where comets should sleep, nickel vaporizing and the cold anti-tails blooming in defiance. It is in every operational sense a worst-case scenario wearing the mask of safety. Use it and you stress test the entire chain detection under duress astrometry. Through a shifting coma trajectory prediction despite non-gravitational kicks. International coordination under a deadline that ends when the object vanishes forever. This is not practice. This is baptism by fire without the risk of burning the planet. The scale begins to make sense. The November 7th registration deadline is not bureaucracy. It is a starting gun. The November 10th workshop is not a lecture. It is a war room where astrometric pipelines are synchronized, where citizen scientists are handed calibrated tools, where every observer, professional or porch-bound, becomes a node in a global nervous system. The 2-month window from November 27th to January 27th is not arbitrary. It is the final heartbeat before 3I Atlas dims below the grasp of even the largest scopes, taking its secrets into the dark. JWST Hubble VLT, Keck Subaru Mars orbiters twisting mid-mission for a glimpse, all are committed not opportunistically but by reservation, millions of dollars in mirror time, booked like operating theaters for a single patient. This is not the profile of routine science. This is the profile of a system proving it can still function when the target is a lie. And yet, the anomalies remain. The nickel without iron, the anti-tail in high definition, the CO2 dominance, the age. Each could be natural. Each has a theory, a sketch maybe, but none have been confirmed, and the combination forms a silhouette no natural comet has ever cast. The training narrative holds if the goal is readiness. It strains if the goal is truth. Because if 3I Atlas is merely a difficult comet, the response is proportionate. If it is something else, a relic, a probe, a message in a bottle from a dead civilization, the response is still proportionate. But the label changes. The campaign becomes not rehearsal but reconnaissance, not defense drill, but first contact protocol executed under the cover of planetary defense, because that is the only machine humanity has built that can mobilize at this scale without explaining itself to the world. We are left with two truths in tension. One, planetary defense requires exactly this kind of stress test, and 3I Atlas is the perfect tormentor. 2. The object's anomalies are real, documented, and unexplained, and the decision to activate IAWN was made before conjunction ended, before the full post-perihelion data flooded in, based on glimpses that were already too strange to ignore. Both can be true. The drill can be real, and the target can be more than a target. The network can be training for doomsday while quietly preparing for revelation. The question is not which story is correct. The question is whether the world will be told when the data decides. 3I Atlas is the perfect tormentor wrapped in the perfect alibi. It is a comet, diffuse, deceptive, shrouded in a coma that turns every centroid into a gamble. So observers must wrestle with the full astrometric nightmare brightness peaks that lie gas jets, that nudge the nucleus off the predicted line, non-gravitational accelerations that rewrite orbits nightly. It is fast 58 kilometers per second, twice Earth's orbital clip, compressing observation windows into heartbeats mirroring the frantic tempo of a short warning impactor detected on final approach. It is interstellar composition, unknown models, useless, every assumption a coin toss, forcing astronomers to track without a safety net of prior knowledge. And it is harmless, 1.8 AU, at closest, already slingshotting away mistakes, cost nothing but pride and data. Zero risk, maximum stress. This is not a drill. This is the crucible. The campaign is engineered like a planetary defense response in miniature. Registration is the roster call, every scope, every backyard, Dobsonian, every citizen scientist with a Raspberry Pi tracker locked into the chain. The November 10th workshop is not a seminar. It is a synchronization pulse standardizing astrometric pipelines. So a measurement from Tokyo aligns pixel perfect with one from Tucson, ensuring data streams merge without friction. The 2-month window from November 27th to January 27th is the operational heartbeat, sustained coordinated global testing. Whether real-time aggregation works when borders dissolve and politics are supposed to vanish. This is not abstract planning. This is the machine running hot valves, open pressure gauges redlining. proving the infrastructure can breathe when the sky is on fire. DART was the proof we can move a rock. 3 years ago, a kinetic slug shaved minutes off Dimorphos' orbit with surgical precision. But Dimorphos was a known quantity mapped, modeled, rehearsed. Real threats arrive blind. They demand detection, refinement, threat assessment, deflection planning in days, not years. Every link depends on position. A single arcsecond of error at discovery becomes a continent-sized miss at intercept. Comets multiply the chaos. They outgauze. They jet. They drift. You cannot hit what you cannot predict. 3. Atlas delivers all of that: diffuse target, unpredictable pushes, compressed timeline without the apocalypse. It is the controlled burn before the wildfire, the live round, in the chamber with the safety on. International cooperation is the silent stakes. An impactor does not ask for passports. It lands where physics decrees, and the fallout circles the globe. Response must be planetary telescopes in Chile feeding data to deflection planners in Moscow. Japanese orbiters twisting mid-mission to snap a frame, citizen astronomers in Cape Town, uploading centroids before sunrise. Trust is the currency. Can conflicting schedules be arbitrated in hours? Can raw data cross borders without red tape? Can consensus form faster than the object moves? The campaign is a stress test for that trust, the proof that humanity can act as one organism when the sky falls. Precedent is ironclad. Fighter pilots dogfight real jets, not flight sims. Firefighters ignite controlled blazes, not PowerPoints. Surgeons cut into complex anatomies before the trauma bay. Realistic conditions forge readiness. Artificial ones breed complacency. 3i Atlas is the ultimate live fire range, representative enough to matter, safe enough to fail. The investment: millions in JWST hours, VLT blocks, Keck nights, Mars orbiters pirouetting for a glimpse, is not extravagance. It is insurance. Better to discover the pipeline clogs during a drill than when the clock reads T-minus 72 hours to impact. And yet, drills are built around the typical, not the exceptional. You train on the bell curve, not the black swan. Solar system comets swarm the inner system, dozens every year. Water-rich iron-nickel balanced outgassing, predictable orbits, elliptical. Anyone is a perfect proxy. Why crown the outlier? Why choose the comet that bleeds nickel without iron, that exhales CO2, like a dry ice volcano that sprouts an anti-tail in Hubble's glare, that is older than the sun and faster than any local threat? Representative training does not pick the alien. It picks the familiar. Timing is the fracture. The bulletin dropped the instant solar conjunction ended October 21st, 00 UTC. The decision was preloaded, cocked during the blackout when the object was invisible behind the sun's glare. No new post-conjunction frames triggered it. The anomalies: nickel vapor at 3.88 AU, iron silent, CO2 dominance were already in hand, detected in July and August by Keck VLT JWST. The campaign was not a reaction to fresh weirdness. It was a response to weirdness already documented, already briefed, already deemed significant enough to mobilize the planetary defense machine before the curtain rose. Restricted access is the final tell. Astronomy as porous data pours into open archives the moment shutters close. Here, participation is gated. Register by November 7th, or vanish. Attend the November 10th workshop or lose clearance. This is not collaboration. This is controlled dissemination. The workshop is not teaching new tricks. It is synchronizing the narrative, ensuring every measurement feeds the same pipeline, every anomaly is filtered through the same lens. Citizen scientists are welcome not for openness but for saturation, a global mesh, dense enough to drown outliers and consensus. The drill hypothesis holds if the goal is readiness. It strains if the goal is truth, because if 3i Atlas were merely a difficult comet, any inter-system snowball would suffice. If the anomalies were irrelevant, the decision would not predate visibility. If this were pure training, the gates would swing wide. The campaign can be both rehearsal and reconnaissance, but the balance tilts with every anomaly unexplained. Every workshop sealed, every pre-conjunction decision justified by data the public has not seen. The machine is running. The question is whether it is preparing for the next rock or preparing us for what this one already told them. When astronomers spot a cosmic curiosity, a fleeting nova, a rogue pulsar, or even the occasional wayward asteroid, the sky's the limit on who gets to peek. Telescopes swing open like saloon doors, preprints flood, archive like confetti, and the call goes out. Hey world, grab your scopes. We need eyes everywhere. Data cascades into public archives. Collaborations bloom overnight, and the thrill of shared discovery turns solitary stargazers into a global hive mind. But with 3i Atlas, the International Asteroid Warning Network flipped the script. No open bar, no free-for-all frenzy. Instead, a velvet rope register by November 7th. Or sit this one out. Attend the mandatory workshop on November 10th. Or forfeit your front row seat. Possess an active minor planet center code for your observatory. Or don't bother showing up. This isn't the astronomy of exuberant invitation. It's the choreography of control a gated enclave where only the cleared and calibrated contribute to the symphony of data. On the surface, it whispers standardization. We need uniform measurements, synced pipelines, centroids that align across continents without the chaos of amateur guesswork. Fair enough. Planetary defense thrives on precision, not poetry. But peel back the layer, and it hints at something sharper. A filter not just on who observes, but on who sees the mosaic as it forms. Participants plug into the real-time integration, watching the aggregated piece emerge from scattered pixels. Orbital tweaks coma. Evolution's anomaly. Clusters knitting into patterns only the inner circle grasps in full. Outsiders, they get the scraps, isolated frames. Solo spectra headlines stripped of context like puzzle pieces, without the box art forever guessing at the picture. Layer onto that the murmurs of military shadows, unverified but insistent, slithering through the ether like exhaust from a classified engine. Whispers from anonymous sources in aerospace bunkers and defense war rooms claim retasked assets. Satellites yanked from routine orbital patrols. High-altitude spy platforms pivoted from earthly intrigues to stare sunward at this interstellar ghost. What does that mean? It means a carbon dioxide-rich comet like 3A Atlas most likely formed in the extremely cold outermost regions of its parent star system, possibly beyond the equivalent of our Kuiper belt, in regions so distant that carbon dioxide was the dominant ice, not water. This implies 3 Atlas preserves the chemistry of a very cold, very distant formation environment. It's a messenger from the frozen edge of another solar system, one possibly much older and colder than ours when our comets formed. If even a sliver holds truth, it elevates the game. Interrupting black-budget ops for a harmless wanderer isn't a drill. It's a declaration. Priority high enough to shuffle decks in the shadows to trade geopolitical eyes for cosmic ones. The U.S. Space Surveillance Network, that tireless DoD and Space Force Sentinel, already catalogs thousands of orbital interlopers. As a matter of course, debris sats, near-Earth rocks, anything stirring the cislunar pot, tracking 3i Atlas at 1.8 AU. That's not eyebrow-raising, it's boilerplate. The gravitational hum of space domain awareness, but retasking. That's the pivot from passive watch to active hunt. The moment routine vigilance hardens into something with teeth, no official nod from NASA or IAW, and of course their bulletins stay buttoned up. All astrometry and exercises, no mention of khaki-clad collaborators. Yet the silence amplifies the static, turning unverified into unavoidable. So here we teeter on the knife's edge of two worlds each, swallowing most of the evidence like a black hole devours light. Interpretation 1. A masterstroke of foresight. IAWN's 8th observing exercise since 2017, slotted for fall since 2024, long before 3i Atlas blinked into view on July 1st, and now serendipitously supercharged by this perfect proxy. A comet fuzzy and fickle, demanding the full astrometric gauntlet. Interstellar, its chemistry a wild card beyond our models. Outbound at escape velocity, zero stakes for stumbles. The barrier's pragmatic housekeeping for a network green but unbloodied dart's triumph 3 years back proved we can shove rocks, but untested protocols for short-fuse threats still creak under load. Registration builds the roster. The workshop sinks the score. The November 27th to January 27th window tests the tempo of global handoffs, data zipping from Chilean deserts to Hawaiian peaks without a hitch. Wise undeniably. In a decade of IAW and ops, this is evolution, not emergency rehearsing the orchestra before the symphony of doomsday demands an encore. Interpretation 2. A velvet glove over an iron response, the training banner. A comforting scrim draped over uncertainties too prickly for prime time. Anomalies don't whisper, they howl nickel ghosts, sans iron siblings, anti-tails jabbing sunward like defiant spears, a CO2 shroud 8 times thirstier than water, an age etched in billions predating our dawn. Pre-conjunction glimpses in July and August already flagged the freakery, greenlighting the mobilization before the solar veil lifted. Why this outlier over the solar system's snowball parade? Why gates on a field usually flung wide? Why echoes of shadowed assets even if unconfirmed? It's not tinfoil paranoia. No motherships, no invasion playbook, but a precautionary pulse when the data diverges. This far from doctrine you don't glance. You glare every asset locked lest the harmless harbor hooks we can't yet name. What tilts the scales isn't one smoking gun, but the stack a tower of explainables that piled high casts a silhouette too sharp for coincidence. Chemical quirks plus gated gates plus whip-crack timelines plus outlier anointing, plus military murmurs, each a thread in routine's fabric but woven tight. They strain toward something sturdier, a precautionary web spun not for show but for snare, not conspiracy's fever dream. No cabal cloaking cosmic cabals, but the quiet calculus of custodians who know the void's indifference better than most. When an interstellar relic rewrites the rulebook mid-passage, you activate beyond the playbook, framing it as drill to keep the herd from stampeding while the herders map the unknown. And if that's the pulse beneath the protocol, if genuine unease about 3i Atlas's essence drives this dance, then the real riddle glares from the gaps, what whispers in the embargoed data, the pre-release pipelines, the professional silos that the public sips secondhand. Astronomy's transparency is a virtue, not a vow. Embargo's guard, the green preprints tease the tentative, and asymmetries are the price of rigor. But delays breed doubt, turning not yet into not ever. And in that shadow, questions aren't just fair. They're fuel. Avi Loeb's voice cuts clearest here. The Harvard provocateur pegging a 30-40% shot at non-natural roots, not screaming probe, but urging the audit before assumption. His Galileo project hunts techno-signatures with scalpel precision, and for 3i Atlas the cumulative oddities vaporize alloys echoing earthly forges, jets flipping like throttles, a trajectory too tidy for tumble stack to a black swan, probability slimmer than 1 in 10 quadrillion, yet non-zero enough to warrant the watch. No dismissal, investigation, yet whispers of withheld frames from Mars orbiters, unshared spectra from shadowed scopes, fuel the fire viral clips purporting leaked vessel footage from Japanese feeds, grainy ghosts debunked as artifacts but persistent as urban legends. X threads blaze with the frenzy. NASA activates defense as alien object enters, overlaid on Hubble's teardrop haze. Counter cries from skeptics slicing through with routine exercise, no motherships. The debrief calls out the hype-pinning misinformation on shutdown snagged NASA, unable to even update its site amid fiscal freeze, let alone orchestrate a secret armada. Orbital Today echoes experts wave off the wild, grounding it in science's steady march. But the pattern persists, a digital diaspora demanding the full spectrum. Let's anchor in the verifiable lest we drift into the driftwood of conjecture, because that's the line where credibility crumbles, where questions curdle into QAnon quicksand. Documented bedrock. IAWN's campaign, unprecedented for interstellar kin, launched October 21st via Minor Planet Center bulletin targeting 3i Atlas for a 2-month astrometry crucible from November 27th to January 27th. Flagship scopes JWST's infrared gaze, Hubble's high-def stare, VLT's spectral sieve, Keck's volcanic vigil have poured resources, capturing a coma laced with CO2 excess nickel plumes, at cryogenic odds iron's eerie absence and anti-tail defying solar shove. Preprints and peer reviews affirm the freakery no match for solar system snowballs, a time capsule from a galactic dawn. outbound on a hyperbolic farewell at 210,000 km h perihelion, kissed October 29th at 1.4 AU. Earth's safest at 270 million kilometers, December 19th. Facts etched in photons and published code. Reported but ragged New York Post and kin claiming NASA activated defense arrays. Satellites retasked classified eyes. Unlocked source to phantoms in the machine unconfirmed by agency lips blooming amid a U.S. government shutdown that has NASA idling like a grounded shuttle. The articles exist, the echoes multiply, but verification vapor trail. Conjectures the chaff alien vessels in leaked clips. Radio pings at 1420. Mannerhart's maneuvers mimicking mothership sensational chum for YouTube's Shark Tank. Debunked by Hubble's honest haze and Tailcatcher's tail predictions. Distinction drawn, we reclaim the high ground. Legitimate probes honor the facts, fueling transparency without fabricating foes. Baseline restored the unusual glint, sharper retasking isn't routine. It's reallocation, a DoD shuffle from debris dodges to deep space scrutiny that screams signal over noise. Space surveillance networks net is wide yes. Thousands tracked from LEO litter to NEO nuisances, but diverting assets mid-mission. That's the tell of the deviation from the humdrum, especially for an object already waved off as wide-berth wanderer. If the leaks hold water, and their multiplicity across outlets like Economic Times and Marca suggests at least a ripple of reality, then 3i Atlas crossed from scientific sparkle to strategic stare-down. The kind where planetary defense blurs into precaution against the poorly understood. NASA's own playbook, the National Strategy for Planetary Defense, hums in the background. Detection, characterization, mitigation on standing alert. No off switch for oddities that outpace the ordinary. Amid shutdown stasis with websites frozen, and ops on ice, whispers of quiet activation gain grip, protocols persist, assets adapt, and an interstellar interloper becomes the unintended litmus for a system built for bangs, not whispers. The campaign's close-out telecon. February 3rd looms like a verdict-veiled data deluge from December's mid-check distilled into findings that could canonize the comet or crack the narrative. Until then, the gaps gape. Embargoed emissions from ESA's Mars Express flyby. October 3rd withheld JWST deep dives, post-perihelion. The workshop's closed-door doctrines on comet challenges that sound suspiciously like anomaly autopsies. Transparency's tempo in astronomy is deliberate peer vetting before public volley, but for a visitor this vexing the delay feels like a dimmer switch on the dawn. In the end, the scales don't crash. They quiver two truths in taut tango. The drill is real, a rehearsal riveting in its relevance, honing the harp strings of global guard before the gale. The response is real too, a reconnaissance veiled in valor treating the Tower of Traits chemical heresy. Structural seals, temporal traps as warrant for wide-eyed watch. Ambiguity, perhaps engineered a buffer against the bedlam of what if fake buying bandwidth for the data to declare itself. But as 3i Atlas arcs away, fading from frames by January's frost, the public pulse demands its due, not dread but disclosure. Not dismissal but the full photon flood. We're not bystanders in this ballet, we're the audience that pays the ticket, the species staking the stars. Question the quiet, honor the hard-won facts, and hold the line between wonder and wild. The void answers in volumes. Let's ensure we hear it unfiltered before the visitor vanishes, leaving only echoes in the questions we dared to voice. Retasking is not a casual pivot. It is a command chain earthquake. A classified satellite built for missile plumes or adversary orbits does not simply glance sunward because a comet looks interesting. It is yanked from its mission like a chess piece in mid-game schedules. Shredded budgets, bled justifications, climbing the ladder to generals and directors who sign off only when the new target outweighs the old. If the whispers hold even a grain of truth that infrared eyes originally tuned for ICBM heat signatures or optical arrays designed to catalog rival constellations were redirected to 3i Atlas, then the object did not merely enter the planetary defense pipeline. It vaulted to the top of the priority stack, a harmless wanderer suddenly worth more than whatever it displaced. No official confirmation, of course. NASA's lips stay sealed. IWN's bulletins recite astrometry and exercises like a liturgy. But the media chorus New York Post, Economic Times, Marca, each citing anonymous insiders in aerospace corridors or defense war rooms, sings the same refrain with enough independence to suggest more than echo chamber static. Either one leaked memo seeded the storm, or multiple throats guarded by NDAs, and clearances whispered the same secret to different ears. The latter is harder to dismiss. Military involvement in itself is not the red flag. The U.S. Space Surveillance Network tracks everything that moves beyond the atmosphere debris satellites, near-Earth rocks, interstellar strays. 3I Atlas at 1.8 AU falls squarely in that net. Routine pings from ground radars and space-based sensors are as expected as sunrise. NASA and DoD swap data like old friends. Planetary defense requests for military eyes are filed, granted, executed without fanfare. The question is scale and intent. Is this the standard handshake or a full court press? Without the classified logs, we are blind, but the pattern unprecedented IDAWN campaign gated access, pre-conjunction decision chemical heresy, already strains the routine label. Add retasking even as rumor, and the strain becomes a scream. Data embargoes are the next fault line. In professional astronomy, proprietary periods are sacred. 6 months to a year of exclusive access after JWST, or Hubble time, a shield against scoops, a reward for the grind of proposal observation reduction. Standard, protective, necessary. Yet observers tracking 3I Atlas note a hush beyond the norm. Spectra expected in public archives by September or October, still locked in vaults. Mars Express flyby frames from October 3rd embargoed past typical windows. JWST deep field integrations post-perihelion nowhere to be seen. Administrative lag possible. Government shutdown froze NASA's web updates and slowed pipelines plausible. Or deliberate data too volatile for immediate release, requiring vetting modeling consensus before the world sees the full anomaly bloom. Military gathered frames carry classification by birth. If DoD sensors contributed, the data is born classified. Public release, a negotiation, not a given. We cannot know what we cannot see, and that opacity is the perfect petri dish for doubt. Occam's razor cuts both ways. Simplest story. Standard tracking, standard embargoes. Media hype inflating routine into emergency because NASA activates defense cells more than scientists measure comet. Most of the noise fits, clickbait thrives. On misunderstanding, shutdown silences. Official rebuttals, public misreads protocol as panic. But the stack resists the blade. Chemical anomalies documented in preprints, nickel vapor at cryogenic distances. Iron silence, CO2 dominance, and a tail in high def are not hype. They are spectra. The IIAWN campaigned first for an interstellar object. Gated mandatory pre-planned is not protocol. It is precedent shattered. The decision predates visibility rooted in July-August data, already screaming different. Media reports of retasking, even unverified, align with that trajectory, not contradiction extension. If multiple leaks surface independently, the echo chamber collapses into evidence. Enter Dr. Abraham Aviloeb, Frank B. Baird Jr., professor of science at Harvard, former astronomy chair, Black Hole Initiative founder, 1,000-plus papers, presidential science advisor, a resume forged in starlight and peer review. By every metric, he is the establishment's golden child. Yet he is also its heretic, the man who looked at Oumuamua's acceleration, no coma, no tail, no outgassing, and dared whisper light sail. Not as gospel, but as hypothesis, a thin reflective surface pushed by solar photons, potentially artificial, potentially a relic. The Astrophysical Journal letters paper with Shmuel Bialy was not a declaration. It was a door cracked open. The community slammed it shut. Hydrogen iceberg, solar radiation pressure on unseen dust. Exotic cometary physics, but Loeb refused to retract the question. To some, he is the last honest scientist willing to court ridicule to keep the search for extraterrestrial intelligence physical, not just radio. To others, he is the cautionary tale, brilliance untethered speculation dressed as science, public trust eroded for headlines. With 3I, Atlas, Loeb is not silent. He calls it a black swan, a statistical outlier, so Extreme 1 in 10 quadrillion against natural formation that it demands scrutiny, not dismissal. Nickel vapor without iron anti-tail defying vectors. CO2 shroud. 70 to 14 billion years of drift. No single trait proves artifice, but the constellation tilts the scales. His Galileo project now trains machine learning eyes on the data stream, hunting techno-signatures with the same rigor once reserved for exoplanets. He does not say alien probe. He says rule nothing out until the photons are counted. And that is the crux. The intellectually honest stance is not certainty, neither drill nor discovery, but uncertainty held like a live wire. The documented facts anomalies, campaign gates delays form a pattern too sharp for comfort. The unverified reports retasking classified eyes fit without friction. Loeb's voice, polarizing yet credentialed, amplifies the ambiguity, not proof, but permission to ask. The data will decide eventually. February 3rd, Telecon post-embargo releases peer-reviewed autopsies. Until then, the void between what is known and what is withheld is not a conspiracy. It is a question. And questions in the dark between stars are the only light we have. Loeb does not plant flags on alien soil. He plants questions and fertile doubt. With Oumuamua, he never declared probe. He declared the data fits a light sail as cleanly as it fits unseen hydrogen ice. And ruling one out, without ruling the other in, is not science, it is comfort. The same scalpel now carves 3I Ars Atlas. Nickel tetracarbonyl is not a headline, it is a fingerprint. The 341 nanometers and 352 nanometer lines glow with the precision of a factory exhaust stable at 100 degrees Celsius, photo-dissociated into pure nickel vapor by sunlight alone. No natural comet has ever exhaled this molecule in detectable quantities. Iron's absence is not a footnote, it is a felony against cosmic law. Supernovae forge the twins in lockstep. Nebulae condense them in tandem. Meteorites carry them in ratio. 3I. Atlas bleeds one and withholds the other, a chemical divorce no known process can decree. The anti-tail is not a trick of light. It is a geometry that refuses to resolve. Loeb's own simulations, large grains, lagging small grains sprinting, come within a hair's breadth, but never close the gap. The persistence, the angle, the refusal to dissolve into textbook dust dynamic, something is missing. Or something is extra. He calls it a black swan not because it will peck us to death, but because it may rewrite the aviary. The Trojan horse is not prophecy, it is provocation. If an advanced civilization wanted to study soul, would it arrive waving banners, or would it arrive wearing the camouflage of a comet ice dust chemistry just off enough to raise an eyebrow? But not a red alert. Loeb does not demand we believe. He demands we look. The Galileo project is the instrument of that demand, machine learning eyes trained on the same photons, the same spectra, but with intent sharpened to a single question: does this object violate natural law, or merely our understanding of it? The IAWN campaign is the answer in motion. Structure is confession. 17 days from bulletin to registration close is not logistics. It is a starting gun. Professional observatories do not pivot in fortnights. JWST time is auctioned in semesters. VLT blocks are booked before the previous year's data is reduced. Yet every flagship, Keck, Subaru, Gemini, Hubble, Mars Express, carved out reserved windows, not opportunistic scraps. The November 10th workshop is not a seminar. It is a calibration ritual. Attendees do not learn new tricks. They synchronize old ones to sub-arc second tolerance, ensuring a centroid measured in Tokyo is indistinguishable from one in Tucson. Data submission is not voluntary. It is mandated, funneled into a pipeline that aggregates before it archives. Participants see the mosaic in real time. Outsiders see shards. This is not open science. This is controlled synthesis. The decision predates visibility. Solar conjunction ended October 21st. The bulletin dropped at their 0 UTC. The campaign was loaded, cocked, waiting for the veil to lift. July and August spectra nickel plumes at 388. AU iron silent CO2 excess were already in hand, already briefed, already deemed sufficient to shatter precedent. No inter-system comet, no matter how fuzzy or fast, would trigger this choreography. The choice of 3I Atlas is not convenience. It is consequence. The anomalies are not incidental. They are the invitation. Organizational intent is etched in the gates. Registration is not invitation. It is vetting. Minor planet center codes are required. Amateurs with backyard rigs need not apply unless they are already cataloged contributors. The workshop is not optional. It is clearance. Miss it and your data is orphaned. This is not collaboration. It is conscription. The structure is built for two purposes that bleed into each other. Stress test the planetary defense nervous system. Astrometry under duress. Global handoffs at sprint speed, non-gravitational chaos in the math. Map the anomaly before it escapes. Nickel forensics, anti-tail geometry. Chemical divorce, every photon squeezed for clues to origin. The training narrative holds if the goal is readiness. It fractures if the goal is revelation. Because if 3I Atlas were merely a difficult comet, any solar system snowball would suffice. If the anomalies were irrelevant, the gates would swing wide. If this were pure rehearsal, the decision would not predate the data it claims to rehearse. The campaign is both drill and dissection, but the balance tilts with every embargoed frame, every withheld spectrum, every pre-conjunction decision justified by anomalies the public has not seen in full. Loeb's voice is the wedge that keeps the door from closing. He does not need to be right to be necessary. His presence forces the question to stay open. Are we training to track a comet, or are we investigating a question mark wearing ice? The structure answers in actions, not words. 17 days. Mandatory clearance. Real-time aggregation. Reserve telescope blocks. Pre-planned activation. The priorities are clear. Measure the unmeasurable map. The unmapped, do it fast, do it together. Do it before the object vanishes forever. Whether the final report canonizes a new natural process or cracks open a door to the artificial. The campaign is already a success for planetary defense, for anomaly autopsy. For the quiet recognition that some questions are worth the full weight of the machine. The data will speak. February 3rd Telecon. Post-embargo releases. Peer-reviewed verdicts. Until then, the structure stands as confession. This is not routine. This is response. And the response is proportionate to the uncertainty, not the threat. The decision was not a reaction. It was a detonation with a preset fuse. July-August Spectra nickel ghosts at 388. AU iron silent CO2 excess were already in the war room when solar conjunction slammed the shutters. The October 21st bulletin was not the starting gun. It was the curtain rising on a play rehearsed in the dark. The anomalies were not discovered. They were known. The campaign is not a fishing expedition. It is a harvest. November 10th is not a workshop. It is a calibration chamber. Miss it and your data is orphaned. Register by the 7th or vanish. This is not astronomy's open door policy. It is a velvet choke chain. The justification standardization is airtight. Centroids must align to subarc seconds, timestamps to femtoseconds, brightness curves to instrumental offsets. Without it, the global mosaic collapses into noise. But the side effect is stratification. Post-November 10th. There are two castes, the briefed who know what to hunt and how to report it, and the blind who point scopes at a dot and pray their pixels matter. The workshop content is sealed. No slides leaked, no agendas posted. The inner circle sees the evolving orbital solution, the comet's chemical pulse, the anti-tail's stubborn geometry. Outsiders see press releases. The citizen call-up is the wild card. IIUN has never invited porch astronomers to a formal campaign, yet here they are. 8-inch Dobbs, Raspberry Pi trackers, backyard rigs with MPC codes flooding the pipeline with low SNR but high-volume data. Volume is not prestige, it is saturation. A global mesh dense enough to drown instrumental quirks and consensus. For training, it tests the system's digestive tract, can in the minor planet center ingest hundreds of nightly submissions without choking. For verification, it builds a quorum no single scope can impeach. If the aggregated centroid drifts, if the nickel line flares, if the anti-tail flips, the signal must survive statistical crucifixion. The window is a guillotine. November 27th to January 27th is not a schedule. It is a death clock. Post-perihelion 3I Atlas arcs outward, brightness bleeding with every million kilometers. December still juicy coma glowing like a bruise. January a ghost on the edge of grasp. Late January below the horizon of even the Titans. After that eternal dark. One pass. No encore. Every photon not captured is a photon lost to entropy. The pressure is not artificial, it is existential. Miss the window and the question natural relic or engineered relic dies with the light. Data flow is the final confession. Astrometry streams to the MPC in real time, not the leisurely drip of academic archives. Orbital elements update nightly, sometimes hourly. This is not science's contemplative tempo. It is threat tracking cadence. Impact scenarios demand continuous refinement. Where is it now? Where will it be? Tomorrow. What if the jet fires again? Applied to a harmless object, it is rehearsal. Applied to an anomalous one, it is autopsy. Either way, the coordinators see the full cadaver. Individual observers see only their slice. The resource ledger is obscene. JWST at $1,000 per hour. Hubble's geriatric but priceless eyes. Keck VLT Subaru Gemini each night a six-figure burn. Mars Express twisted mid-mission for a 30 million kilometer flyby on October 3rd. Millions in mirror time personnel fuel for generators on volcanic peaks. For training exorbitant. For understanding a black swan before it vanishes. A bargain. Compared to predecessors, the contrast is surgical. Oumuamua, opportunistic glances. No coordination data scattered like confetti. Borisov systematic but decentralized. No IAWN. No gates. 3I Atlas Impact Scenario Choreography applied to a ghost. The framework was built for rocks that might hit us. Using it for one that cannot is either the ultimate stress test or the ultimate precaution. Yet in the already charged atmosphere created by 3A Atlas's earlier anomalies, sunward jets' weird chemistry, these official reassurances seem to pour fuel on the fire for a small but vocal group. They saw the delay as proof agencies were hiding something. They asked if it's just a normal comet, why not release the highest res high-rise images right away? What could they reveal that needs such careful analysis before the public sees it? 3I Atlas is the perfect tormentor for steps 1-3. Fast, diffuse, alien, harmless. It forces the system to run hot without the apocalypse. But the anomalies nickel tetracarbonyl iron divorce anti-tail geometry elevated to step 3's nightmare. What if the characterization breaks the model? The campaign is not just practicing the sequence. It is stress testing the assumption that the sequence works when the target refuses to be a comet. The structure reveals the priority. Understand the ununderstandable before it escapes. The training is real. The investigation is real. The flexibility is intentional. Frame it as routine, mobilize like it's not. Let the data decide. If it's a new natural process, we rewrite the textbooks. If it's more, we rewrite the cosmos. Either way, the machine is running, the window is closing, and the question is not why. They built it this way. The planetary defense kill chain is not a ladder. It is a tightrope strung across 7 chasms, and a single frayed strand drops the walker into oblivion. Detection, tracking, characterization, threat. Assessment, decision, mission, planning, execution. Each step is a dependency, each a veto point. Miss one and the rest is theater. Asteroids are honest drunks. They stagger on gravity's predictable path. Comets are liars with afterburners. Outgassing jets fire like rogue thrusters, nudging the nucleus off the orbital line by centimeters. Today, kilometers tomorrow. Continents the day after. The uncertainty is not noise. It is bias baked into the physics. A 70% impact probability is not a coin toss. It is a loaded die, and the house always wins if the model is wrong. Oort cloud comets are the ultimate ambush. Perturbed from the solar system's frozen halo, they fall sunward on hyperbolic arcs, invisible until they cross the inner system's glare. Detection might come at 2 AU with 6 months to impact. Characterization, a coma the size of Jupiter's orbit hiding a nucleus the size of Manhattan. Threat assessment, a probability cloud wide enough to swallow Europe. Decision A. UN committee arguing liability while the clock ticks. Mission planning DART took 5 years for a known target. Here you have weeks. Execution launch windows dictated by orbital mechanics, not diplomacy. The timeline compresses to a heartbeat, and the heartbeat is panic. 3I, Atlas, is that nightmare wearing a harmless mask. It is a comet diffuse jet spewing non-gravitationally possessed. It is fast 58 kilometers observation windows measured in days. It is alien composition defying every solar system snowball. Nickel tetracarbonyl ghosts. Iron divorce anti-tail geometry mocking radiation pressure. It arrived unannounced from interstellar space, simulating the Oort cloud sucker punch without the apocalypse. It is the perfect tormentor, every failure mode of the kill chain, 0 stakes for failure. Miss a centroid by an arcsecond learn. Mischaracterize the coma, iterate. Botch the international handoff, fix the protocol. No cities vaporize. No civilizations end. Just data and the chance to bleed before the real fight. But the campaign is not a sandbox. It is a live fire range with the safety off. 17 days to commit. Mandatory calibration on November 10th. Real-time orbital refinement at the Minor Planet Center. JWST burning 30,000 an hour. Hubble's geriatric eyes. VLT Keck Subaru Mars. Express pirouetting mid-mission. Citizen astronomers flooding the pipeline with low SNR but high-volume pings. This is not astrometry practice. This is the full kill chain and miniature detection to characterization to threat assessment, even if the threat is 0 executed at operational tempo. The training narrative is not a lie. It is a half-truth. The scope exceeds measurement. It is rehearsing the decision, under uncertainty the consensus, under pressure the execution, under compression. The deeper question is not why they chose 3I, Atlas. It is what they are training to survive. The stated goal, improve comet astrometry, is true but trivial. The unstated goal is the black swan. The Oort cloud comet that appears at 2 AU with 90 days to impact, outgassing like a broken engine characterization. Impossible probability cloud swallowing half the planet. That is the scenario no model can predict. No protocol can pre-write. No nation can unilateral. That is the scenario where the kill chain must function at warp speed or fail catastrophically. 3I Atlas is the closest proxy humanity will ever get without dying. The anomalies are not incidental. They are the accelerant. Nickel without iron. Anti-tail defying vectors. CO2 shroud. Age predating soul. Each is a stress fracture in the model, a reminder that the next threat might not obey the textbook. The campaign is not just practicing the steps. It is practicing the breakage. What happens when the data refuses to fit, when the probability cloud widens, when the decision must be made with 70% confidence and 100% consequence? The structure gates real-time aggregation resource. Hemorrhage is built for that breakage. It is flexible enough to be drill and dissection, rehearsal and revelation. The training is real. The investigation is real. The flexibility is intentional. Planetary defense is not about moving rocks. It is about moving under uncertainty. 3I Atlas is the crucible where the system learns to bleed without dying, to decide without knowing, to act before the model catches up. The campaign is not preparing for the comet we expect. It is preparing for the comet that rewrites the rules mid-flight. And if that comet is 3I Atlas or something like it, the machine is already running. The window is closing. The data will decide. But the structure has already confessed this is not practice. This is survival. The IAAWN campaign is not a drill. It is a stress fracture test of the species. They are not practicing how to measure a comet. They are practicing how to stay a single organism when the comet refuses to be a comet. Every anomaly in 3I Atlas, nickel without iron, anti-tail geometry, CO2 dominant 7 to 14 billion year drift is not a data point. It is friction. Friction between models and reality. Friction between observatories and nations. Friction between certainty and the void. That friction is the real target. The true scenario they are simulating is not can we track a fuzzy object, but can we agree on what we're seeing when the data screams in a language no one speaks fluently under a deadline measured in weeks. That is the black swan planetary defense scenario, not the rock that hits, but the rock that confuses. A 70% impact probability, a 30% chance it's a rubble pile, a 5% chance it's something else. That 5% is the poison. That is where trust fractures, where Japan hesitates to share Keck time, where ESA withholds Mars express frames, where the UN committee argues liability while the clock burns. 3i Atlas is the perfect poison pill, harmless but radioactive with ambiguity. The structure is the confession. 17 days to commit is not logistics. It is commitment under uncertainty. The mandatory November 10th workshop is not standardization. It is controlled narrative calibration. Citizen saturation is not data volume. It is consensus quorum. Real-time NPC aggregation is not operational tempo. It is a single source of truth. NAWST burning $30,000 an hour is not astrometry practice. It is no second chances. The workshop is not teaching astrometry. It is teaching what to look for when the textbook fails. The next 60 days are the exam. November 7th, the participant list locks. After this, no new voices. The circle is sealed. November 10th, the briefed cast is born. They will see the full orbital solution evolve in real time. We will see press releases. November 27th to January 27th, the window. 3i Atlas dims from magnitude 18 to 23. Every night another 5 million kilometers gone. Every missed observation is a photon lost forever. February 3rd, Telecon, the verdict. Not just here's the orbit, but here's what we agreed it means. While the telescopes stare outward, the campaign stares inward at humanity. Will data flow transparently or vanish behind embargoes? Will consensus emerge or fracture along national lines? Will the anomalies be named or normalize? Will the public be told what was seen or only what was decided? The meta-level test is whether humanity can function as a cooperative species when facing cosmic uncertainty. That is what the IAWN campaign might really be testing. And the results matter not just for 3i Atlas, but for every future scenario, where we face something we don't immediately understand but must respond to anyway, because the universe doesn't owe us simple explanations. Sometimes the answer is we don't know yet. And what we do during that period of not knowing reveals more about our readiness than any technical capability ever could. So as we watch this campaign unfold in real time, as observations accumulate and data gets analyzed, the question to keep asking isn't just what is 3i Atlas, but are we ready for whatever it might be? And more broadly, are we ready for the next cosmic surprise, whatever form it takes? Right now, as you read this, 3i Atlas is out there moving away from the sun at 210,000 km/h. Every hour it travels another 210,000 km deeper into space. Every day, another 5 million kilometers. By the time this sentence ends, it will be measurably farther from us than when you started reading. That's not metaphor. That's literal. This object is leaving, and everything we're about to learn will be learned while it's still observable, or it won't be learned at all. The timeline is compressed and immediate. Today is October 29th. Perihelion just happened. 3i Atlas is now on the outbound leg of its hyperbolic trajectory. In 9 days, November 7th, the registration closes for campaign participation. That deadline isn't arbitrary. It's the cutoff point where logistical coordination becomes impossible. Anyone wanting to contribute observations officially must commit within the next week. After November 7th, the participant list is locked. 3 days after that, November 10th, the mandatory workshop occurs. We don't know the content. We don't know what techniques will be taught or what specific observational priorities will be emphasized. That information exists somewhere in planning documents and training materials, but it hasn't been made public. The universe does not grade on a curve. It grades on readiness for the question it refuses to answer simply. And right now, the only thing moving faster than 3i Atlas is the deadline to prove we can handle the answer, whatever it is. What we do know is that whatever gets taught in that sealed November 10th workshop will shape the entire campaign like a lens forged in secret. It will dictate what data is hunted, how measurements are homogenized, What questions hundreds of telescopes from JWST's golden mirrors to a teenager's 8-inch Dobsonian will collectively ask of 3i Atlas for the next 2 months. 17 days later, on November 27th, the campaign ignites. That is when the global nervous system goes live. That is when real-time aggregation at the Minor Planet Center begins ingesting astrometry from every corner of the planet, refining the orbital solution hour by hour, sometimes minute by minute. That is when the public locked outside the velvet rope will start scavenging for crumbs. Preprint drops, conference whispers, media leaks, hoping to glimpse the mosaic forming in the dark. December is the golden hour. 3i Atlas will still glow, at magnitude 18, bright enough for high-resolution spectroscopy for coma dissections for nickel line hunts, with instruments now tuned to the anomalies frequency. This is when the big guns JWST Hubble VLT Keck will burn their million-dollar nights chasing iron ghosts, mapping brightness curves, probing the anti-tail's stubborn geometry. This is when the nickel tetracarbonyl hypothesis will be stress-tested. Does the emission scale with distance as predicted, or does it flare in ways no natural coma should? This is when the question "where is the iron?" becomes a spectral manhunt with instruments sensitive enough to detect a single atom in a haystack of light. January is the fade. The object dims to magnitude 23, slipping below the grasp of all but the titans. Smaller scopes go dark. Citizen data streams dry up. The campaign's January 27th curtain is not arbitrary. It is the moment 3i Atlas crosses the detection horizon, vanishing into the cosmic background forever. After that, it exists only as a hyperbolic vector in a database, a ghost receding at 58 km/s, carrying its secrets into the galactic night. There's no second pass. No, we'll catch it next time. This is the only time. Every photon not captured by January 27th is a photon erased from history. First, orbital deviations. If the refined trajectory shows non-gravitational acceleration beyond standard outgassing models, jets firing in patterns no rotation or surface map can explain, the mystery deepens. It suggests either exotic volatile reservoirs, asymmetric mass loss, or forces we have no name for. The MPC's real-time updates will be the heartbeat monitor. Any drift from the gravitational line, even by arc seconds, will ripple through the kill chain. Second, and spectroscopic evolution. December's deep dives will hunt for iron with instruments now primed for the absence. They will map nickel emission rates against heliocentric distance testing, whether the tetracarbonyl model holds or fractures. They will scan for new lines, exotic molecules, unexpected abundances that preliminary data hinted at but could not confirm. Composition is origin. Anomalies in composition are anomalies in genesis. Third, brightness anomalies. If 3i Atlas flares or fades independent of solar distance, sudden surges, periodic dimming, asymmetric light curves, it signals dynamic surface processes, rotation exposing fresh ice, subsurface pockets rupturing, fragmentation events, or something engineered to pulse. Photometry from the global mesh will be the EKG revealing rhythms no static model predicts, a test of the comet's structural integrity, a moment when everything it's made of faces, stresses it may not have endured in billions of years. Let's start with gravity. 3i Atlas has been accelerating non-stop toward the Sun, reaching approximately 68 km over 240,000 km/h at perihelion. This isn't just speed. It's pure kinetic energy. The energy lost as it fell toward the Sun is converted to kinetic energy. The campaign is not just collecting data, it is collecting consensus. Every anomaly is a vote. Every deviation is a veto. The workshop's hidden curriculum will determine which votes are counted and which are silenced. The real-time pipeline will determine who sees the tally. And by January 27th, when 3i Atlas slips below the horizon, the final orbital solution, the final spectral atlas, the final light curve will not just describe a comet, they will describe Nicaeus. How we handle the unhandleable, how we agree on the disagreeable, how we face the void when it refuses to blink. The clock is literal. As you read this, 3i Atlas is 210,000 km farther away than when you started. By the time you finish this sentence, another 58 kilometers. The universe is not waiting. The workshop is 9 days away. The window is 60 days wide. And the question is not just what is 3I Atlas, it is, when the answer is, we don't know yet, will we still know how to act? The more detailed the images, the more we can infer about the physical object hiding behind the gas and dust, and Hubble and JWST observations will be critical here, because they have resolution no ground-based telescope can match. Now, what would constitute red flags versus expected results? Expected results would be refined orbital parameters confirming the hyperbolic trajectory, better composition measurements resolving current anomalies through natural explanations, successful international data coordination demonstrating planetary defense readiness, and published papers by spring 2026 detailing findings. That is the baseline success scenario training accomplished. Science advanced preparedness validated. Red flags would be sudden orbital changes, inconsistent with comet behavior, continued absence of iron despite intensive observation, discovery of electromagnetic emissions or structured signals, unexplained data embargoes extending beyond typical proprietary periods, or simply silence. If the campaign concludes January 27th and no findings emerge by mid-2026, that would raise questions. Scientific papers take time, yes, but preliminary results usually appear quickly through conferences and preprint servers. Extended silence after intensive observation would be unusual. For those outside the official campaign, observation is still possible. Citizen scientists with 8-inch or larger telescopes in the southern hemisphere have the best viewing during December. 3I Atlas will be a faint fuzzy patch magnitude 10 to 11, not easy but detectable with proper equipment and technique. Photographing it will not reveal composition or detailed structure, but it provides the visceral experience of seeing an interstellar visitor with your own eyes. Through your own instrument, a connection to this cosmic event that reading reports never can. Even without telescopes following along is straightforward. The Minor Planet Center publishes updated orbital elements regularly. Amateur astronomy forums, especially Reddit's r/Space and r/Astronomy, will have ongoing discussions as news emerges. Professional astronomers often share preliminary findings on social media before formal publication. The Astronomer's Telegram and the Arxiv preprint server are where breaking astronomical discoveries appear first, sometimes days or weeks before peer-reviewed journals. Dr. Loeb and researchers involved with the Galileo project will likely publish analysis rapidly. Loeb has been consistently vocal about 3I Atlas since its discovery, and his pattern is to share findings through preprints and public statements before waiting for slow peer review processes. Whether you trust his interpretations or not, he's reliably transparent about data and methodology. Following his publications provides one perspective on what the observations are revealing. NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office website will likely provide updates, though possibly less frequently than independent researchers. Official channels move slowly, filtered through communication offices and approval processes. But when they do release statements, they carry institutional authority that individual researcher claims do not. Balancing rapid independent reports against slower official statements gives a fuller picture than relying on either alone. Major science journalism outlets will cover significant developments. Scientific American Nature News, Science Magazine, Space.com. These publications have reporters embedded in the astronomy community who break stories as they emerge. Quality varies, and headlines often sensationalize, but the underlying reporting usually includes interviews with researchers and links to primary sources. Following those outlets ensures you do not miss major announcements. The meta story to watch is transparency. Does data flow openly? Do findings get shared promptly? Is there clear communication about what is being discovered and what remains uncertain? Or do barriers appear? Information gaps delayed. Releases contradictory statements. Those patterns tell their own story separate from the specific scientific findings, because how institutions communicate during this campaign reveals their priorities and their comfort level with public scrutiny. And after January 27th, after the campaign officially ends, attention shifts to analysis and publication. Raw data must be processed. Observations must be compared against models. Anomalies must be investigated. Peer review must occur. That takes months at minimum, potentially a year or more for comprehensive studies. But the first signals, preprints, conference talks, embargoed data releases will start appearing by February or March. The silence or the flood in the weeks after January 27th will be the first real verdict, not on 3i Atlas but on us, on whether we can face the unknown together, or whether we fracture when the answer is not simple. So the immediate aftermath might be quiet. Do not interpret silence as cover-up. Interpret it as science proceeding at its normal, frustratingly slow pace. But by summer 2026, we should have preliminary papers, conference presentations, reviews, and synthesis articles. That is when the fuller picture emerges. When researchers who have spent months analyzing data present their conclusions, when debates occur in academic settings about interpretation, when consensus begins forming or does not around what 3i Atlas actually was and what it meant, that future analysis will happen regardless. It is built into how science works. What is unique about this moment right now is that we are at the beginning. The campaign is launching, the observations are starting, the data does not exist yet. We are watching knowledge being created in real time, which is rare and valuable. Most science reaches public awareness only after completion, after papers are published and findings are established. This time we are seeing the process unfold while the outcome remains uncertain. That uncertainty is uncomfortable but important, because this is how discovery actually works. Not through sudden revelation, but through gradual accumulation of data that slowly resolves ambiguity. And sometimes, rarely, through discovering that ambiguity does not resolve, that what you are seeing genuinely does not fit existing frameworks and requires expanding those frameworks to accommodate new reality. Whether that happens with 3i Atlas remains unknown, but the next 2 months will determine the answer, and we will be watching. Step back, pull perspective out from the specifics of 3i Atlas, away from the chemical anomalies and campaign structures and data embargoes, and look at what we are actually witnessing, because this moment represents something larger than one interstellar comet. This is humanity's transition into being an interstellar-aware civilization. We are learning in real time how to function in a universe where objects from other stellar systems pass through regularly, where the solar system is not isolated but is constantly receiving visitors from elsewhere. And that transition, regardless of what any specific visitor turns out to be, fundamentally changes our relationship with the cosmos. Oumuamua was the wake-up call. October 2017, an object moving through the inner solar system on a hyperbolic trajectory, definitively not bound to the Sun, confirmed through detailed observation to be interstellar, in origin the first one we had ever detected. It caught us unprepared. Telescopes were not designed to track objects moving that fast. Observation protocols were not optimized for hyperbolic visitors. By the time we realized what we were seeing, Oumuamua was already leaving, and we scrambled to gather whatever data we could before it disappeared forever. This outgassing creates continuous rocket thrust, a phenomenon scientists call non-gravitational force. Essentially, 3i Atlas has turned itself into a natural rocket engine. For an object weighing 1 billion tons, this thrust, though small, is cumulative and entirely measurable enough to seriously skew long-term position predictions. The gravest problem is that during these 8 critical days hidden behind the Sun, scientists are completely blind, no data to directly measure this thrust. Now 3i Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar object, and critically the first one where we had institutional frameworks ready, where planetary defense networks could activate, where international coordination could occur systematically rather than frantically. This is what prepared response looks like. Not perfect, not without questions, but organized, coordinated, systematic. That represents progress from the chaos of Oumuamua's discovery to the structured campaign for 3i Atlas. And this is just the beginning. The Vera Rubin Observatory beginning operations now in late 2025 will revolutionize detection. It is designed to photograph the entire visible sky every few nights with sensitivity far exceeding previous surveys. Astronomers estimate Rubin will detect dozens, possibly hundreds of interstellar objects over the next decade. Objects that have been passing through the solar system for millennia, but we lacked the technology to see. We are about to go from interstellar visitors as rare curiosities to interstellar visitors as regular occurrences we catalog routinely. That changes everything because currently each interstellar detection is major news, international coordination, intensive observation, maximum scientific effort. But when we are detecting multiple interstellar objects yearly, that level of response becomes unsustainable. We will need triage systems criteria for determining which visitors warrant intensive study and which get cataloged with basic observations. We will need automated pipelines to flag anomalies, unusual chemistry, unexpected trajectories, non-natural signatures before human eyes even see them. We will need protocols for when an object does warrant escalation. When does it trigger IAWN? When does it trigger Galileo Project scrutiny? When does it trigger planetary defense deflection planning? Even if the probability is low, 3I, Atlas is the dress rehearsal for that future. It is the first time we are applying the full planetary defense apparatus to an interstellar object, not because it threatens us, but because we finally have the machine in place. The campaign is not just about this one comet. It is about building the muscle memory. For the dozens that come next, it is about learning how to separate the mundane interstellar snowballs from the ones that might carry messages, relics, or warnings. It is about learning how to stay calm and coordinated. When the next visitor shows up with nickel tetracarbonyl breath and an anti-tail that points the wrong way, we are not just watching a comet fade into the dark. We are watching humanity grow up. From a species that looked up and saw only stars to one that looks up and sees traffic. And the traffic is about to get heavy. That is what the 3I Atlas campaign might really be teaching us: how to decide what matters, how to coordinate efficiently without mobilizing every available resource for every detection. But it also raises the statistical question that makes some scientists uncomfortable and others fascinated. If interstellar objects are common, if hundreds or thousands pass through the solar system annually, but we only detect the largest and brightest, what is the probability that at least one of them is artificial? Not a naturally formed comet or asteroid, but a technological artifact probe, spacecraft, whatever form, advanced civilizations might use for exploration. The math is not crazy. Our galaxy contains approximately 300 billion stars. If even a tiny fraction of stellar systems produce technological civilizations at some point in their history, that is millions of civilizations not all existing simultaneously, because stellar lifetimes span billions of years, but cumulatively over galactic history millions. If even a tiny fraction of those civilizations send probes or artifacts into interstellar space, that is thousands of objects potentially drifting through the galaxy. Compare that to natural interstellar objects which number in the billions. And yes, natural vastly outnumbers artificial, but artificial is not zero. It is small but non-zero. And small but non-zero is exactly the kind of probability space we should be prepared to encounter. This is where planetary defense and SETI converge. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence traditionally focused on radio signals, intentional communications broadcast from civilizations trying to make contact. But if technological species send probes rather than broadcasts, if exploration is physical rather than electromagnetic, then detection becomes the same challenge as planetary defense, finding and tracking objects moving through space. The telescopes are identical. The observation techniques are identical. The difference is interpretation. Is this object a rock or an artifact, natural or artificial? And increasingly researchers recognize that distinction might not be obvious. If a civilization wanted to explore stellar systems, would they send obviously artificial spacecraft? Or would they design probes to mimic natural objects, allowing undetected observation without triggering response from any inhabitants? Stealth is not about malevolence. It is about not contaminating observations. An anthropologist studying isolated tribes tries to observe without influencing behavior. Extraterrestrial anthropologists might apply the same principle, which means the artificial objects, if they exist, might be specifically designed to look natural, and we would categorize them as comets or asteroids because that is what our classification systems expect to see. That is why Loeb's Trojan horse analogy resonates despite making many scientists uncomfortable. Not because it is likely, but because it is unfalsifiable without careful investigation. You cannot distinguish between a natural object and an artificial object designed to appear natural without looking for the technological signatures specifically. And if you are not looking, if you assume natural origin by default, you will never find the exceptions. The only way to rule out artificial origin definitively is to look for it systematically and not find it. Dismissing the possibility without investigation does not prove natural origin. It just proves you did not look. That does not mean assuming everything is artificial. That is equally unscientific. The correct approach is agnostic investigation. Observe thoroughly. Analyze carefully. Look for characteristics that would distinguish artificial from natural emission patterns, structural features, trajectory changes, inconsistent with gravitational and outgassing forces, electromagnetic signals, anything that would require technology to explain. If you find nothing, tentatively classify as natural while acknowledging you might have missed something. If you find anomalies, investigate further until a natural or artificial explanation clearly fits. That is the only scientifically responsible approach, and that is what makes the 3i Atlas campaign significant regardless of outcome, because the observation intensity, the data quality, the international coordination represent our best attempt yet to thoroughly characterize an interstellar visitor, whether it is natural or artificial. We will learn more about it than we learned about Oumuamua or Borisov. We will expand our database of interstellar object characteristics. And if it is natural, that database helps us understand what natural looks like, making future artificial detection easier by establishing a baseline. If it is artificial, that is obviously paradigm shifting. Either outcome advances understanding. There is also the philosophical dimension, the fact that we can detect interstellar objects, that we can mobilize international resources to study them, that we can coordinate across political and cultural boundaries in pursuit of knowledge. That says something about our species. We are no longer passive observers of a static sky. We are active participants in a dynamic galaxy, cataloging its traffic, preparing for its surprises, learning to ask the right questions even when the answers might upend everything we thought we knew. 3i Atlas is not just a comet, it is a mirror, and what we see in it, natural relic or engineered envoy, will reflect not just the cosmos but us. It is easy to focus on humanity's divisions, conflicts, failures of cooperation. But space science represents the opposite. Scientists worldwide collaborating because curiosity transcends nationality. Because understanding the universe matters enough to overcome the barriers that fragment us in other contexts. That is worth acknowledging. The IAWN campaign, whatever its ultimate findings, demonstrates that capability. Observatories on every continent, contributing data, governments sharing resources, researchers publishing openly. That is functional global cooperation. Imperfect, yes. Complicated by bureaucracy and communication challenges, certainly, but functional. And if we can coordinate effectively on 3i Atlas, despite its anomalies and uncertainties, that proves we can coordinate on future challenges. Asteroid deflection, comet monitoring, whatever cosmic surprises emerge from improved detection capabilities. Which brings us to the responsibility question. We now have the technology to detect interstellar visitors. We have the capability to study them intensively. We are developing infrastructure to track and potentially interact with objects passing through our stellar system. That means we can no longer claim ignorance. If a future interstellar object poses genuine threat, we will not have the excuse that we did not see it coming. And if a future object shows clear evidence of artificial origin, we will not have the excuse that we were not looking. 3i Atlas is teaching us to look, to coordinate, to take seriously the possibility that the universe contains surprises. That is the bigger picture. This is not just about one comet with strange chemistry. This is about humanity growing up cosmically. Learning that the solar system is not isolated. Learning that visitors arrive from elsewhere and will continue arriving. Learning that we must be ready for scenarios we have not encountered yet, because the universe does not limit itself to what we have already imagined. That maturation process is ongoing, and 3i Atlas represents one chapter in that longer story. So when the campaign concludes in late January, when papers get published in 2026, when findings emerge about composition and structure, and whether the anomalies have natural explanations, remember the context. Whatever we learn about 3i Atlas specifically, we are also learning how to be the kind of civilization that can encounter the unexpected without panic or denial. that can investigate thoroughly without predetermined conclusions, that can coordinate globally despite differences. Those lessons matter at least as much as any specific scientific discovery. And maybe that is the ultimate answer to why the International Asteroid Warning Network activated for a harmless interstellar comet. Not because 3I Atlas is dangerous, but because it is educational, because preparation is not about responding to current threats. It is about being ready for the threats you have not encountered yet. The ones that appear without warning and demand response despite uncertainty. The ones that test whether your systems work under conditions they were never specifically designed for. 3I Atlas is that test, and we are taking it seriously because the stakes not of this object but of being unprepared for future objects justify the effort. That is what makes this moment worth paying attention to. Not because we know something extraordinary is happening, but because we are positioned to discover whether something extraordinary is happening. And that possibility, that openness to discovery is what drives science forward. So where does that leave us? We started with the question, why does the International Asteroid Warning Network activate unprecedented observation protocols for 3I Atlas, an interstellar comet that poses zero collision risk to Earth? We have explored answers. Training exercise to validate planetary defense systems. Scientific opportunity to study an anomalous interstellar visitor. Precautionary monitoring of an object exhibiting characteristics we do not fully understand. Response to chemical signatures inconsistent with known natural comet composition. Each explanation has supporting evidence. Each has gaps. And perhaps the honest answer is that all of them are partially true. Here is what we know with certainty. 3I Atlas is real. Its hyperbolic trajectory confirms interstellar origin. Its chemical composition, particularly the nickel emissions without corresponding iron, does not match standard comet models. Its anti-tail phenomenon has not been observed with this clarity in solar system comets. The IAWN campaign is unprecedented in structure and scope for an interstellar object. Stay engaged. Follow the data. Watch the transparency. The universe is speaking. Are we listening? Global observatories are committing millions in resources to an intensive 2-month observation. All of that is documented, verified through multiple independent sources. Not speculation, but fact. Here is what we do not know. Why this object specifically triggered this response. Why the campaign structure includes restricted access and mandatory workshops. What is being taught in those workshops that requires controlled participation? Whether classified observation assets are involved beyond routine tracking. What the full data set reveals to campaign coordinators that individual observers do not see. Whether the nickel emissions have natural explanations we have not discovered or represent something genuinely unprecedented. And critically, what findings will emerge when analysis concludes and papers get published in 2026. Multiple perspectives remain valid. If you believe this is responsible planetary defense training using a convenient interstellar visitor, you are supported by substantial evidence. The campaign structure mirrors preparedness exercises. The stated objectives align with legitimate strategic planning. The investment level, while high, is justifiable for validating systems we will depend on during actual threats. That is a reasonable, well-grounded interpretation. If you believe something more significant is occurring, that the anomalies warrant investigation beyond routine training, that the response level indicates genuine uncertainty about what 3I Atlas represents, you are also supported by evidence. The chemical inconsistencies are real. The unprecedented campaign activation breaks established patterns. The timing and intensity suggest priorities beyond what typical training requires. That is equally reasonable and equally grounded. Both can be true simultaneously. Training that uses real anomalous data becomes investigation when the training target exhibits characteristics demanding serious study. The categories are not mutually exclusive, and perhaps that ambiguity is healthy. Perhaps certainty at this stage would mean we are not asking enough questions or we are accepting easy answers to complex situations. What makes this different from typical space mysteries is timing. This is not historical analysis of events long past. This is happening now. November 7th is 8 days away. Registration closes. November 10th, mandatory workshop. November 27th, campaign begins officially. Between now and January 27th, 2026, we will have answers or at least more data. Three-eyed Atlas will not remain mysterious indefinitely. Either the observations resolve anomalies through natural explanations or they deepen mysteries further. Either way, we will know more in 3 months than we know today. That is why you need to stay engaged. Subscribe to this channel immediately if you have not already, because I will be covering every significant development. Workshop details if they leak. Observation findings as they emerge through preprint servers and scientific conferences. Analysis of published data updates through December as brightness measurements and spectroscopic studies accumulate. Coverage of the January conclusion and immediate aftermath. This is a continuing story, and I am committed to following it through completion. Hit that notification bell. Seriously, because timing matters. When findings emerge, they will be newsworthy for days before mainstream media moves on. Being notified immediately means you are informed while discussion is active, while you can participate in comment sections and forums, while your engagement contributes to keeping the story visible. Drop a comment right now. Tell me, based on everything you have heard, do you think Three-Eye Atlas is a natural comet with unusual but explainable characteristics, or do you think something more significant is occurring? Do not just lurk, participate. Your perspective matters because this is a global conversation. And tell me where you are watching from. Because this campaign involves observatories on every continent, researchers from dozens of countries, and the story belongs to everyone, not just those with professional access. Share this video if this information feels significant. If the questions we have raised resonate with you, if you think others should be paying attention, use whatever platform you prefer. Reddit's r/space and r/astronomy communities would find this relevant. X if you are active there. Facebook groups focused on astronomy or space science wherever your communities gather, because the more people watching, the more pressure exists for transparency. The more questions get asked, the harder it becomes for inconvenient findings to disappear quietly into proprietary embargoes or classification restrictions. You are not passive observers. By watching this video for this long, by engaging critically with these questions, by refusing to accept surface explanations without scrutiny, you are contributing to oversight. Science functions best with public attention. Transparency emerges when people care enough to demand it. Your attention isn't incidental. It's essential, and approach the next 3 months with appropriate balance. Don't assume conspiracy where routine procedure explains observations, but don't assume routine procedure where documented anomalies suggest something genuinely unusual. Stay skeptical of sensational claims. Stay equally skeptical of dismissive explanations that ignore evidence. The truth, whatever it is, deserves investigation grounded in data rather than predetermined conclusions. 3. Atlas is out there right now, moving away from us at 210,000 km. It came from beyond our solar system, from a star we can't identify, from a stellar environment that might not even exist anymore. It's visiting us once briefly, and then returning to interstellar space forever. We have one chance to understand it. One 2-month window. One opportunity that ends definitively on January 27th. Everything we learn in this window. Everything we miss permanently. And the fact that humanity's planetary defense network is treating that opportunity as worth unprecedented international mobilization tells us something. Maybe it tells us we're learning to be prepared. Maybe it tells us we're cautious. Maybe it tells us they see something in the data that we don't yet have access to. But it tells us this matters. That much is certain. October 21st, 2025. International Asteroid Warning Network activates. November 27th, 2025. Global Coordinated Observations begin. January 27th, 2026. The campaign concludes. Between now and then, we discover whether Three-Eye Atlas is just another comet passing through, or whether it's the beginning of understanding that the universe contains surprises we're only now becoming equipped to recognize. Stay vigilant, stay curious, keep watching, and whatever happens over these next 90 days, remember you were paying attention when it mattered, when knowledge was being created, when answers were still uncertain, when asking questions was more important than pretending to have definitive explanations. The campaign is launching. The observations are starting. History is being written in real time, and we're watching it happen.